All right, we're back. No, I'm saying. Anyways, welcome back to my humble opinion. And let's get inside. You know who? That's right. My religious life video blog. As I said during my political life video blog, because David Hogg doesn't even get it. All he thinks about is you, yeah, nah, all that. But here's some you don't want to know. And that means you, David Hogg. You need to read your Bible about Palm Sunday for once. Because everything else can be civilized. And you know why? Because after 5 days of Lent or whatever it happens, then it's gonna be Palm Sunday. So I'm reading from Mark chapter 15, verses 1 through 39. And here's some you all know about this one, because Jesus before Pilate is. That's right. That's why we're talking about the cross and resurrection. So on Monday, Thursday, and good. So is Monday, Thursday, Good Friday. Then it's gonna be Easter Vigil, and Easter Sunday is gonna be huge. But enough of this. Anyways, Jesus before Pilate. It says on verse 15 says, as soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus and led him away. And they handed over to Pilate and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? He answered him, you say so. Then the chief priest accuses him of many things, and Pilate asked him again, Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you. But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. So this is what happens to the topics of the status and the grace returning to the fore of as Jesus faced his trial and crucifixion. Because the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. Because to his life, a ransom for many. And why? Because even for him, the path of service requires renouncing all status. You know why? Because the Son of Man is handling over the chief priests. Because everybody knows they will condemn him to death. And they will hand it over to the Gentiles. So, why? Because they will mock him and spit upon him and flog him and kill him after 3 days he will rise again. It's all that simple. Now, here's the only thing that happens about Pilate. Is handed over Jesus to be crucified. Now, on verse 6 says, now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them. Anyone for whom they ask. And this is why it happens on verse 7. It says, now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered them, do you want me to release you, King of the Jews? For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priest handed over him. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke, Pontius Pilate spoke to them. Then what do you wish me to do with the man you called the King of the Jews? You know what? They shouted back, crucify him! And Pilate asked him, why? What evil has he done? That's the question. It has, everything else can be civilized. What evil has he done? Yeah. Well, guess what? Here's the evil part. You see, every time everybody goes outside for those anti-gun students marching for their lives across the country, including gun rally, anti-gun rally in Washington, D.C. And what David Hogg has done something very stupid about this one. And what about what rest of the 4 survivors in, yes, you guessed it, in Parkland, Florida? Well, the evil has everything else capitalized. Don't you think Nicholas Cruz killed Meadow? And Andrew Pollock, Meadow's daughter, was so disappointed. And you know why? Because everything else can be civilized. It's the same way as Pilate. Pilate says, what do we have to do? Says crucify him. And Pilate asks this question, what evil? Why? What evil has he done? Because they shouted all the more, crucify him! And that's why Pilate would, on verse 15 says, wishing to satisfy the crowd, release Barabbas for them. And after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. That is why, because Palm Sunday, it happens to everybody at my church, and it has happened. Palm branches, I got a palm branch. They're waving palm branches, and why? Because everything knows about spectacular spectacle events. Waving palm branches, marching, down the streets of Jerusalem, and because after the Last Supper, for this one. Now, this is what happens. The soldiers just got mocked. Because the soldiers in the courtyard of the palace, that is the, they struck that one, this is going to be huge. They crucified him after 9 o'clock. So that's why, the cock crows, and the rest of the bystanders says, You're with Jesus. And it says, I don't know what you're talking about. And it says, so when the cock crows at noon, you will deny me 3 times. And he wept and bittered. Because when 9 o'clock in the morning they crucified, and everybody knows that King of the Jews, that read him and what about because with him they crucified 2 bandits on the right and on the left. And you know why? Because everybody knows that they're shaking their heads. On verse 29 says, aha, you will destroy this temple and build it in 3 days. Just remember I said last Sunday's fifth and last Sunday of of Lent. And everybody knows that it destroy this temple. Save yourself and come down from the cross. And in the same way that the chief priest and the scribes all do this, all this spectacular on these things. Because after when noon comes, when 12 at noon comes, the darkness came over the land, and until 3 o'clock, it says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This is what he calls for Elijah. Because everybody says, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." And on verse 40, because everything else could be could be words. And that's after Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last, because the curtain of the temple was torn in two. And breathed his last, two from top to bottom. And that's why the centurion came, pierced his side, came blood and water flowing down. And the centurion who stood and faced him, in a way, after he breathed his last, he says, "Truly this man was God's son." So finally, because they are finally on verse 40 of Mark chapter 15 says, there were, from a distance among them were Mary Magdalene, and so is Hoseas and Salome. They came and follow him up, and that's why before took a cloth and all that. This is what happens. Everybody knows that when a centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph, bought a linen cloth and taken down the body, and he wrapped it in a cloth and laid it in a tomb that has been hewn out from the rock. And he rolled the stone away, a stone against the door. And you know why? Because it is so simple that many people of today feel abandoned by his friends, family, society, even God. Because everybody knows that Andrew Pollock is so disappointed. And David Hogg doesn't even care. He wants to trash the NRA, all that stuff. But I warn David Hogg of an advice that he's gonna repay your sins. He's gonna be sorry for what he's done. He's done evil to trash the NRA and all that stuff. Because Palm Sunday is a horrible thing. Because like I said, everybody knows how does the other students feel at school in Parkland, Florida, and the rest of the country? They feel disappointed. Everybody and abandoned by family, friends, and society. Because the sense of abominational at work can feel very strong to marginalized. From now on. And everybody's been crushed by labored and danger and anxiety to our performance, by frightened by the prospect of layoffs. And just remember that, for once, it is described by Studs Terkel's book, Working, and the words of Sharon Atkins. That's why she was a receptionist in Terkel's book. Speaking up for the people. I cried in the morning. I didn't want to get up. I dread Fridays because of Monday. Was never looming over me. Another 5 days ahead of me. There never seemed to be an end to it. Why am I doing this? I'll tell you why. Because God's grace overcomes the most crushing blows of work. And so is all the political stuff, including March for Our Lives over the weekend. And because it will accept it, because God's grace touches people. And it touches people to know that the moment that of Jesus' submission, when the centurion recognizes truly this man was God's son, and it graced triumphantly itself when Jesus tried to restore it. Because the moral, and that's why the moral of my religious life video blog for this Palm Sunday is this. Because everything else, because you know why? Because this amazing grace is one of the ways that our work can be yielded 100-fold now in this day and age, and our lives lead into the age of to come eternal life. And no wonder that terror and amazement has seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. I'll be analyzing this on this very special edition of my Religious Life video blog, and no political life, and we're not gonna do my political life video blog on a Tuesday all the way up to Easter Sunday. And why? Because we're going to talk about this during, Holy Week. It could be on a Wednesday. And so is Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. What about Easter Vigil? Well, same here. And when Easter Sunday comes, that's how it happens. Because in 3 days, it'll be risen up. And why? Because in Proverbs chapter 11 verse 20 it says, the one who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteousness will flourish like a green leaf. And that's my Religious Life video blog story. And I'm sticking to it.